Is Lane Kiffin already recruiting Ole Miss players to LSU or Florida? We'll see.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network anywhere, I think. That's all because of you. Thank you very much. On today's show, we're going to break down everything you need to watch for when the Rebels take on the Bulldogs and a little bit of Egg Bowl action on Friday. Yes, folks, it is a full-fledged Rebel football talk segment. We're going to hit that today. Next, we'll go through some of the keys that Ole Miss must execute in order to win the biggest game in program's history and secure that coveted home playoff game, which would be the biggest sporting event in the state of Mississippi. They talked about that in the press conference yesterday. But first, we kind of need to address the elephant in the room. We need to address the strangeness of yesterday. Lane Kiffin looked noticeably sheepish during his media availability, and somehow that wasn't even the weirdest part of the day. We'll explain all of it. All of that and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off, or $20 off, I should say, your first purchase. So stick around and have fun with that as well. So yesterday was weird. There's really no other way around that. And let's just start the unpacking with the extremely sheepish and why that is absolutely weird with all of the information coming around Lane Kiffin's media availability yesterday. He did not answer any questions about whether he was going to be at Ole Miss or what he thought about job search or anything. He only answered questions about the Ole Miss football program and where it stands. That was it. That's all he was willing to talk about. But he was very much talking like this and just trailing off his words like this. And it was almost like a child, for instance, that knew he had been caught. He was in trouble. He was obviously uncomfortable. And the one thing that you could take away from that press conference is that he wasn't going to be back. This was kind of a last hurrah in a press gathering type situation other than after the game against Mississippi State. So that is one thing that you could take away from what is going on. The next thing was when you look at his body language and the uncomfortableness of it, you could tell that they're on their way out the door. I'm telling you, I've never been more sure of something than I am about this at this point. And that is, if Ole Miss would have allowed him to do it, he would have held off to announce where he was going until 3 days before the playoffs, and they were going to make that a 4-hour-long commercial for recruiting for that school. Ole Miss wasn't going to get any benefit from the playoffs whatsoever. That was the plan. That's the way he thinks. You remember the FAU video talking about season tickets, and he's like really awkward and looked really weird and ended up getting on SportsCenter? He knows how to get publicity about what he wants to get publicity for. That's the reason he has 600,000 followers on Twitter. That's the reason his Instagram account is blowing up, because he knows how to generate engagement. And in this press conference, he wasn't doing that. He just wanted it over. Talk about the game. I'm going to be as honest as I can. The Lane Kiffin show, where I can do it, I'm going to try and do it. He got noticeably more excited talking about Trinidad and Kewan and those guys on the football team, and I think there might be a reason for that. Because that press conference wasn't even the weirdest part of the day. It wasn't. It was crazy weird, and you watch that as like, you don't need to be a body language expert to make a decision off of that press conference. You know what's coming. Only the people that are dead set against seeing it are not seeing it at this point. Period. This isn't somebody that's struggling to make a decision or anything like that. No, this is a person just playing out the rest of the game until they can go on and do the next thing. He desperately wants to coach the playoff, and he is going to try to make that dream of the 4-hour commercial possible. But there is not a world that I can see right now. Now, I guess if Ole Miss beat State, ended up in the SEC championship game, won the SEC championship game, and you're 2 weeks away from the playoffs, maybe then you get the whole thing. It's like, hey, I'm coming back. Yay, whatever. But just right now, if Ole Miss beats Mississippi State and A&M wins or Alabama wins and there's no championship game, I think that Lane Kiffin's probably going to be gone on Monday, just like Matt Moscona said. But like I said, that wasn't even the weirdest part of the day, because this tweet came out as well. And it's from our friend Kewan Lacy, who just copied and pasted and put the tweet down talking about BTA family. Despite all of the outside distractions, me and my brothers are locked in and committed to finishing what we started, with our leader and head coach, Lane Kiffin, locked in, focused, and chasing 1-0 every week. Hotty toddy, spot the ball, 20-25 rebs, yada, yada, yada. Trinidad Chambliss put out a post that was remarkably similar to this, and I think Winnie Watkins did as well, saying he's the only coach that he would play for. And it is starting to feel like there's a circle, a relationship of everything being built, and you can handle everything for players that are going to be recruited from Ole Miss when the transfer portal window opens, whenever that is. That's what it feels like, because all three of those posts were remarkably similar. They all three talked about their coach, their leader, Lane Kiffin, in different ways. And it doesn't match what I'm hearing around that locker room right now, which tells me that they're being recruited right now. They're being talked about whether you go to Florida or LSU. And honestly, I'm hearing a lot more smoke about Florida right now than I am about LSU. They're really confident in Gainesville that they're going to close this out. LSU's confident, but I sense their confidence wavered just a little bit. Florida, pretty dang confident right now. But when that happens, they're going to try to put a roster together through the transfer portal, because the early recruiting window is basically lost since it's the Wednesday after the state game. So the transfer portal is going to be important for Ole Miss and for Florida and for LSU and whoever is taking part in this game of musical chairs. Lane Kiffin obviously has earmarked Winston Watkins. That makes sense. He's from Venice, Florida. That makes all the sense in the world. Kewan Lacy, who in my opinion is the best running back in college football. You saw that at the end of the game against Florida last week. Lane Kiffin made a point to, I don't know, hug up on him, recruit him, whatever you want to do. And then you have Trinidad Chambliss, who has essentially taking over this football team. Now, I do not think they're going to necessarily go. I think they're going to try to take them, if that makes sense. So it's going to be up to Walker Jones and the next head coach and all of that for what they can put down in the NIL market for what they can do. If you can make them stay, you can make them stay with an offer, because if for some reason you get John Sumrall, which Auburn is feeling pretty confident about that right now, this Lane Kiffin situation, they're just like, hey, there's not going to be a Lane situation. This job's going to come open, and it's going to come open fairly quick, but it's going to come open. And maybe you can play that game, because Auburn, they've been panicking since the thought of Ole Miss coming into this coaching search happened. And they have been pressing Sumrall before the job opens to try and get that closed, to try and get Sumrall off the board. And if they can do that, that'll be a good shape, because every team he has ever coached, all they have to do is beat a 1-11 Charlotte team on Saturday, and all of a sudden every team that John Sumrall has been the head coach of has gone to the conference championship game. But this tweet, BTA family, the quotation marks left in, the chat GPT hyphen at the beginning of it. All of it feels like it's fake. It felt like it was sent to him. It felt like a way to galvanize beyond that. And maybe those are guys that just are willing to help out Lane because Lane's trying to coach the college football playoff at Ole Miss. He wants his 4-hour recruiting commercial. I get it. But it is starting to look like a circle of players have been identified as players that Lane is going to go after if and when, yeah, you like that? If and when he leaves Ole Miss for Florida or LSU. That is the situation we're in now, and it's not the situation anybody wants to be in. But hey, let's talk some football. The Ole Miss Rebels are set to Egg Bowl this thing, and we've got the keys to Friday. All of that is coming up next. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It helps keep every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com and sign up to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Locked On is getting ready to change the game yet again, all in the name of having fun following your team. It's coming in December. More details when we have it. And thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in America, maybe the world. I'm not exactly sure. But thank you very much for that. All right, so let's talk a little bit of football and do our keys and all of that we normally do and talk about a football game for a change, because all of this Lane Kiffin stuff, I have to talk about it, honestly. My wife would skin me alive if I didn't talk about it, if we're going to be perfectly honest. But as it sits right now, there's not a lot you can do, and there is a football game on Friday. So the keys to beating the Mississippi State Bulldogs in a game in Starkville, Mississippi, it's really quite simple. Ole Miss needs to start fast. That will be key in this game. Eliminating hope will be massive this week. And also, you don't want a situation where you get into the second half and all of the pressure of being the biggest game in program history starts stacking up on there. There's a real chance to have a moment that is very negative in the second half of that game. And with whatever's going on with Lane Kiffin at the moment, he's going to take the brunt of it. And Keith Carter would get absolutely railed after this game if Ole Miss lost it. The way that you stop that is to jump on them early and stick on them early. Seriously. And also run the football and stop the run. That'll be the calling card for Ole Miss to beat Mississippi State. Ahmad Hardy had 300 yards rushing for Missouri against this Mississippi State defense. They had trouble stopping the run for a good portion of the season. This is a game where Kewan Lacy should pop one or two runs against Mississippi State. And Ole Miss's ability on the defensive line to be better than the offensive line of Mississippi State, that's going to be a calling card as well. That's something that Ole Miss is going to do. It is very rare in the Southeastern Conference that a team with a superior offensive line and a team with a superior defensive line loses the game. It's like a 95% success rate in that situation because the other team can't run the ball. And if you force them to throw the ball, then they have to pass block, and it's problematic. They play Kamario Taylor. He's not that great of a passer. It's going to be problematic, period. And this is a no-go for it on fourth down game. Anywhere. Inside the 20-yard line, on your own side of the field. Definitely don't go for a 4th and 16 from your own 17. Definitely don't do that. But 3 points will be as good as a touchdown in this game. Play clean. No penalties, no turnovers. Play the game straightforward. If that happens, you should win the game. It's going to be really interesting to see in Davis Wade Stadium if Ole Miss can pull that off. I think this is just a run the ball and play defense type of game. Pete Golding is going to have a major role to play for Ole Miss in this game. And Ole Miss knows exactly what causes Jeff Lebby's offense problems, because most of that offensive staff and all that has either competed against Jeff or they were on a staff with him and knew what gave them problems. So Ole Miss taking care of the football, not helping out Mississippi State, avoiding holding penalties and stuff like that. Coleman Hutzler and the defensive coordinator for Mississippi State, they're going to play this game aggressive. I am expecting some engage 8 type stuff to try and take away the running game as much as possible. Ole Miss is going to have to back them up a little bit, and they can with Daquan Wright. They can with Deshaun Stribling. They can with Trey Wallace, and then you will be all right and it'll be able to continue. The stakes of this game cannot be underestimated going in there. You win this game, the biggest game in the history of the state of Mississippi is on the table. Period. The biggest game in the state of Mississippi is on the table. All of this noise that's going on is irrelevant when it comes to that. That is the literal most important thing about this whole deal. Win this game, host the most important game, the best game, the top game, the most relevant game in the state of Mississippi history. And I think Ole Miss can do it. They're going to be probably a 6-point favorite by kickoff. They were a double-digit favorite until all of this stupid noise started coming in and everybody started to wonder, are they going to be heads in the game? I think this game could look a little bit like the Florida game. I think they're going to come out hot. I think you need to be careful with turnovers. And remember in the Florida game, they actually played pretty well. They doubled up Florida on yards, but they gave up a couple of explosive plays in the pass game, and they threw an interception, and that allowed Florida to kind of stay in it. If you don't do those things, the score reflects kind of what the yardage is, and you kind of double them up. It's like a 48-21 type game. So we'll see exactly how it goes for Ole Miss, but Ole Miss absolutely should win this football game. They have the better team, but this rivalry is weird like that. Weird stuff happens in this rivalry. And this will be the first game that Ole Miss has played with a healthy quarterback, maybe since Jackson Dart in 2022, which Ole Miss actually lost that game. But this will be the first time that there's been a healthy quarterback in that game. He was not healthy in 2023, and I don't think he was healthy in 2024 either. But this game, we'll see exactly how it goes. And Trinidad Chambliss dealing with the elements of an Egg Bowl game, it's kind of nice to have a quarterback from Michigan taking the snaps on a night where it's going to be 40 degrees, something like that. So we'll see exactly how that goes for the Rebels. All right, when we come back in our final segment, we're going to break down everything you need to watch for in this year's Egg Bowl. All of that is coming up next. We talked about why this is going to be a big football game. We talked about why if Ole Miss wins the game, they're going to host a playoff game. It'll be the biggest game in the history of the state of Mississippi. All of that stuff is true. But the reality of this situation is Ole Miss has the better football team than Mississippi State this year. They just do. If Ole Miss wins the game, they finish 7-1 in the Southeastern Conference. They finish 11-1 overall. They host a playoff game at the absolute minimum. If they beat Mississippi State and Texas beats Texas A&M at home, they're only a 3-point underdog in that game. And Auburn defeats Alabama at home. And let me tell you, I talked with Zach Blackerby a little bit today, and he said that he thinks Auburn's going to win that game. And I think it would be absolutely hilarious and show the insanity of college football if Arch Manning and Derek Nix are directly responsible for Ole Miss making a trip to Atlanta. Whether you want to or not, that storyline would be hilarious. But that is on the table. That is something that can realistically happen. Ole Miss wins the game on Friday. Texas defeats Texas A&M. Then on Saturday, you have one game, Auburn and Alabama, that could mean everything for this Ole Miss team. For the right to play Georgia in the Southeastern Conference championship game, in a game against a team that they lost to earlier in the year, but had a 9-point fourth quarter lead that was overcome. There's some interesting storylines that you need to look at. There are some interesting things that you need to check out. There are some interesting stories around this game and other games that you need to look at. I'm interested to see exactly how Ole Miss is going to look in this game, because they can talk that they're not distracted and looking forward to go 1-0 and all of that. And my guys at practice said, hey, practice looks normal. And all I can do is take the word of everybody is practice looking normal. So we'll see. They were up for Florida. They were. They just made a couple of lack of focus mistakes. So we'll see. Can Ole Miss defeat Mississippi State on the road and continue this journey for what could possibly happen? I'm not 100% sure, but we'll find out Friday morning. What you need to watch for in the game: does Ole Miss run for more than 200 yards in the game? That'll be the story and let you know if Ole Miss is going to win this football game. If Kewan Lacy can get loose, if Trinidad Chambliss is a problem running the football, maybe Logan Diggs has a carry or two and breaks out. If that is the possibility, this is the situation you're looking at. If Ole Miss runs for 200 yards in the game, that's going to tell the tale. If Ole Miss runs below that, it could get a little bit iffy. If Ole Miss can't run the football, it could be problematic. Number two, Ole Miss has an offense and defensive line advantage over Mississippi State. And we talked about earlier, whenever SEC teams have that advantage over their opponent, they win like 95% of the time. If Ole Miss can protect Trinidad Chambliss, if they can run the football, if they can stop the run and get after the quarterback, you're going to be in a pretty good shape. Now, Blake Shapen is probably going to start the game, to the chagrin of Bulldog fans, if we're going to be completely honest about that. But I expect to see Kamario Taylor pretty quick in that game. And he can throw the ball, but he's an inconsistent passer of the ball, but he can hit you on a deep pass here and there. Not unsimilar to what DJ Lagway did against Ole Miss a week ago. That is what you're going to have to pay attention to and what he can do running the football. If that happens, that is something you need to look for. And will the Ole Miss fans take over Davis Wade Stadium and make the game a coronation? The rumor is there's like 25,000 Ole Miss fans that are heading down to Davis Wade in the game, which I'm pretty excited about, because the last time Ole Miss played down there in 2023, we talked about taking over the stadium, and they just took a ton of people down there, and Ole Miss ended up winning the game. Is this going to look different? I've heard rumors about a certain high-powered booster buying a ton of tickets. So the game's essentially a sellout, and they're passing them out to Ole Miss Rebel fans as we speak. So I'm curious to see exactly what that looks like, and if they can have an effect on that game. I know that one Ole Miss fan in that stadium over a Mississippi State fan makes the cowbells a little bit less loud. And I do not expect them to ring responsibly, because they never ring responsibly in that game. So we will see exactly how it looks for Ole Miss. That's what you need to be watching for in the game. Now, to recap, I am genuinely concerned about Lane Kiffin and what he will do to the roster if he moves on to LSU or Florida. I heard Florida made quite a push yesterday and may, in fact, be in the lead right now. That's the rumor that I've heard. And that's interesting, because they've kind of been playing quiet over the last couple of weeks or so. LSU's been loud. We're going to have a press conference on Monday announcing Lane as a new head coach, all of that stuff. But Florida's been kind of quiet, and they've been extremely confident of this situation. They make no bones about it. They expect Lane Kiffin to be their head coach. So we'll see exactly how that goes and what happens with the roster. Ole Miss will have the right to negotiate with those players first. Those players cannot enter the transfer portal until January 2nd or 5 days after Ole Miss hires a new coach if Lane Kiffin leaves, which it looks like he will if today's press conference was any indication. That is going to be interesting, but I fully expect him, based on history, just purely on history, to try and gut Ole Miss's roster, because that's what he did at Tennessee. That's what he did at USC. That's what they did at Alabama whenever he went to FAU. He got a couple of players to transfer from Alabama to FAU. This is what he does. And again, I will say this over and over again. Ole Miss fans went into this Lane Kiffin situation with their eyes open. They knew what was going to happen. And if Ole Miss makes the playoff this year, it was worth it. Even what's going on right now and what's going to happen. And it could get nasty if we're going to be honest about it. But if Ole Miss makes the playoff, all of this is worth it. Hiring Lane Kiffin was worth it. I don't think you put a statue up. I don't think you invite him back for any type of a reunion. But I think we're in a situation where you can say, hey, that was worth it. Now it's time to take care of Ole Miss and make sure Ole Miss is in the best case it can be. If you can do that, you will be all right. And if you will be all right in that situation, you'll probably be all right over the course of this season and this postseason and next year. Anyway, thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves in offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it's absolutely free. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy breaks down the best conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hotty toddy, y'all. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.